communities that. So it is 6 p.m. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know we have a couple of communities that have not signed in yet, so hopefully they'll be able to make it. I'm trying to rearrange some of my screens. I'm working off of two screens, so if you guys don't see me looking at you, that's because I'm looking at the screen I'm sharing. So welcome to our 2026 Reimagining Rural series virtual gathering. We're really excited to have you. We have about 21 communities signed up this year, and it's super exciting. My name is Jennifer Anderson. I'm the Community Vitality Associate Specialist with MSU Extension, and I'm joined tonight with my colleague Tara Mestel, who is also an Associate Specialist with MSU Extension. And probably the most important person tonight is Timber Dykreeve, and she is our program manager, and she is Zoom sent calm. So if there is Zoom issues, she's hopefully going to save us. And then also we have Cheyenne Wallace, who is the rep from Montana Community Foundation, joining us in Glasgow. So they're going to be talking here in a little bit. Again, like I said, we're just really excited to have you all with us for the next 3 Wednesdays participating. A super exciting year, thanks to a grant from the Wells Fargo Foundation given to Montana Community Foundation. There is additional opportunities available this year through grants and some community coaching and some new activities and opportunities through our Reimagining Rural project. So I want to keep on moving along. Share a little map with you. If you joined us really super early, Timber had this up already, but she created this nice visual. As you can see, we have 21 communities across the entire state. Look at that. The only really area we're missing is smack dab in the middle. So we got a good representation from the western side, the southeast, and then across the Highline. So we are super excited. This is where all of our folks are tuning into for tonight. So I want to go over a little bit before we get started about Reimagining Rural. What is it and what it is not? So Reimagining Rural started around 2019. This is actually like, I think, our fifth or sixth season doing this virtual series. The idea of this is to create a space for Montana's small towns to gather, connect, learn, and work towards building a vibrant future for your community. Our number one goal is to help you build capacity. And we do that by expanding partnerships, increasing our awareness and knowledge about resources, and then hopefully inspiring you to dream big and change the narrative about how our rural communities are dying. So one of the reasons why we ask you all to come together in one location. So one of the reasons why we ask you all to come together in a central location with your community is because sharing those conversations is so important, and inviting people to the table and learning from each other and building relationships. We often use a framework called the Community Capitals Framework in our community development work. And what we tend to focus on, what that says is every community has assets. And you can typically put those into 7 buckets. And out of those 7 buckets, the ones that we think that we really try to influence with our Reimagining Rural series is human capital. So that's what people bring as an individual. Social capital, that is the communication, the relationships, building those relationships with each other and also with other communities and with resources. And then cultural capital, and that is the values and the heritage and how you see yourself as a community, and what you want to your community, what's important to your community now and what's important to your community in the future. So this is kind of a little bit of a background of why Reimagining Rural. It is not a comprehensive planning tool. So please know, after 3 nights, we're going to give you opportunities to listen to success stories, a couple different success stories. We're bringing in some rural experts to share resources and data and methods with you all. And then we're also giving you guys time to have local conversations about what matters most to you in your community and what you can do in a short amount of time to move the needle in a positive direction and build off of the assets that you already have. So again, like I said, it's not a comprehensive planning tool. When you get done with this series and you feel like you need more help or you need more assistance or you just don't know which direction you should be going in, please call us and we can offer up some one-on-one community coaching for you all as you move through the potential grant opportunities when the series ends, and then the larger next steps grants as well. Is there any question? Do you guys have any questions? I guess if you do, I mean, it's great if you do. If you do, please put them in the chat box and we can address those. I want to stay on time. I'm such a bad staying on time person. So it's 6:06. We have 4 minutes till we are going to move into our presentation from Ashley Kavanagh. So anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, I don't see any, and I don't think I can see the chat box. So I'm sure somebody will tell me if there is. All right, so a little bit about tonight. We are going to talk, we're doing the introduction right now. We're going to talk current trends in rural Montana. I'm super excited to hear from Ashley Kavanagh. She has shared some tremendous resources with us. I sent them out to your community coordinators. And then when she wraps up, we're going to jump right into a community spotlight. And we're going to hear from Glasgow tonight. And I know there's some communities out there that are talking about wayfinding. And I'm sure that's going to be one of the things that they share is their tremendous wayfinding project, among other things, fantastic stuff that they're doing up there in the middle of nowhere. So just super excited to hear from them. If wayfinding was not on your to-do list before tonight, it probably will be when we get through with this. That's what we kind of hear from all towns. And then what we'll do is I say turn off the video presentation, but we don't really do that. We just kind of pause it and mute everybody. And then from 7:10 to 7:50, that is an opportunity for you all to have a local conversation to kind of like talk about what you heard, what you saw, what it means to you. Your community coordinators have a list of questions that you can use to help kickstart that conversation. Some places may need them, others might not. That's totally cool. We will get back on at 7:50 and give an opportunity for some closing comments and to hear back from our communities. And if you're in a town that is still talking, that's however long you guys want to talk for tonight is up to you. You can keep on keeping on. So that's the agenda for tonight. If you can, will you put in the chat box how many people you have, like how many folks showed up? And it's okay. We're just curious on numbers. Nobody's going to get a failing grade if they've only got like 3 people in the room. It's all right. So chat box, tell us how many people you have at your location. And in the meantime, what we'll do is transition from me sharing my screen and turning things over to Ashley so she can take over the presentation. So Ashley comes to us from Dick Anderson Construction. That's where she is currently serving as the Director of Strategy there. Prior to this role, she worked in economic development for Yellowstone County, and she also owned 2 small businesses in Cumbank and Columbia Falls. She graduated from Carroll College, and she now lives in Billings with her husband Nate and their son Dean. And she participated in Reimagining Rural as part of the Cut Bank cohort in years past. So she gets Reimagining Rural and what we're doing. So we are super excited to have her here tonight with us and to learn about the resources that she utilizes and then give you guys the opportunity to talk about those. So I am gonna maybe stop sharing. Okay. How do I gotta stop my sharing. Oh, here we go. Stop share. Okay. So Timber, I have stopped sharing my screen. I think we can now turn it over to Ashley.
All right, are you ready for me, Timber?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't see where time. Yes, hit it.
Okay, awesome. Let's see here. I'm going to keep it and I'll share when I have the data to share. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be here with you all. I'm sure some of you across the state, there's so many participating, which is so exciting. I'm sure some of you are wondering, why is someone from Billings our speaker for Reimagining Rural? So I wanted to share my story and how I got to where I'm sitting today. So I actually grew up in a town of 500, and my class had 12 kids until I went to high school. And my husband also grew up in a small community. And when we met in college, we both wanted to move to a city. And so we ended up on the East Coast and had great experiences there. But about a year in, my husband looked at me and he said, I want to go home. And when he said that, I thought, oh, we'll move to Missoula or Billings. And he said, no, I really want to go home. I want to go to Cut Bank. So we moved to his hometown of Cut Bank and lived there for 5 years. And what I hope that you get from our conversation is just what a blessing and opportunity living in rural is. We're so grateful for our experience and the people that we got to work with and be in relationship there. And I actually think the Cut Bank crew is on tonight. So I wanted to say hi. I think my mother-in-law is on this call too. So hi, everyone in Cut Bank. During our time together, I'd like to share a few resources for your toolbox. Reimagining Rural is such a great tool, and I have so much respect for Tara and Jennifer and their team for what they've built with this. And I just want to add some additional resources as you're trying to tackle projects that are of no cost to you, but I hope that can build capacity and your ability to do really, really good work in your communities. So I think one of the major things that I'd like to start with as a foundation is we battle huge perception issues when it comes to living and investing in rural communities. And sometimes perception rules the day. The beauty of data and my work in economic development was really to attract new investment and to retain the investment that we had in all corners of our community. But it also is to tell the story of the community to our stakeholders so that we really had a clear sense of the health and vitality of our community. And sometimes the beauty of data is that it tells us if the story that we are telling ourselves is accurate. So, are we actually better off than we think? I think living in rural, you have such precious time and resources, and there's a group of people working really hard to see their communities thrive. How can we put the best things in your toolkit, is what I'll refer to throughout the evening, so that you can reach benchmarks and make the biggest impact? So I get to interact across the state and really across the region, Wyoming, all over. I get to interact with the community leaders like yourselves who are driving the future of their community. And when I'm in conversation with these folks, I always try to think about, gosh, how can I make their life easier? What tools could I put in front of you, or what encouragement could I give? And I think that Laurel was one of the communities, but a perfect example is I've sat with the Laurel Chamber and their team every year for a couple of years to just go over the data. They just want to know what their numbers are, how many people are moving in, how many are moving out, what are those key industries, and they walk away from those conversations just taking a deep breath. It's really nice to know where you stand. So good data is hard to come by, though. So you could Google, you could find different resources that may be outdated or not accurate. And what I'm trying to put in front of you are tools that are real time and help you to make key decisions. So let's discuss what a few of those are. And I'm going to share my screen. And if someone could watch the comments, and if anyone has anything for me, let me know. Okay, so the first resource, some of you on this call may have gone to the rural retreat in Great Falls. And there was a speaker there from an organization called CORI, the Center on Rural Innovation. And what their goal is at their core is they're trying to put real-time data in front of rural communities with an emphasis on what are the economic drivers nationally and how do we inject that investment into rural communities where some of the biggest hurdles that we see in terms of investment are affordable housing, land, the availability of land. And in many cases, rural communities have great things to offer there. So, how do we set up our rural communities so that if there is an investment opportunity, that we're ready to go? We're ready to work with this stakeholder to get this investment in our community. So I saw on our list when I was preparing that we had folks from Treasure County. So I thought I would use Treasure County as our example. So when you go to the Corey website, they have all kinds of resources for you, but then you'll see on right on the top of your screen when you go to their site, their economic development tool. So you'll see that I put in Treasure County. And then what I did was I just want us to compare to other rural counties in the state of Montana. And what I like about this is the truth is, no matter the size of your community, there's always another community that we look at and go, man, if only we had the resources or the location or the lake or the weather, that would really do it for us. And what this kind of helps us do is turn a little bit to our own community and go, wait, what are those things that we should be really proud of and how do we capitalize on that? So I will continue down and just the first thing you can see towards the left hand of the screen, there's all kinds of data points that you'll be able to pull. So these can be very specific. What we're going to do is just do a very general overview so that you get a sense of what you can pull from the tool. So it gives the general overview of Treasure County, how many residents, and then you see some good things here. The county is growing. Business growth in the county is strong, according to these data points. Educational attainment in your county is excellent. I always love to see that. And then your county's tradable services employment is below the national average. That's okay. We can get into that. And then broadband services in your county is inadequate. We see that across the state. So that's a state issue that we can work on, but that's not for the community. Then it goes into workforce, a huge topic of conversation when we talk about attracting talent to a community. What we're really talking about is we want people to move to our communities who want to work in key positions, typically hospitals, schools, small businesses, take over the HVAC or plumbing company that's been there for generations. And then we also want to find ways to engage them so that their family feels included and there's opportunities for quality of life. Those are all the tickets to increasing your workforce. So you can see for your community when you would put in your specific data, here's how many employees we've added or subtracted. And what you want to see, regardless of the number, is just a net positive. A net positive is what we're looking for there. And then you can see the annual pay, the age, prime age employment rate, which that is typically about 20 to 65 is what we're looking for. How many folks are in the workforce? And what I'll add here is I think it's an equivalent of a Montana mid-sized city of how many folks are not in the workforce because of childcare challenges. And so I would like to just acknowledge that there are many reasons why folks would not be in the workforce at a certain time in their life, but then may plug back in at another point. Okay, then we're going to go down to employment. You can see here it compares to other rural communities, the state of Montana, and then the national averages, and then those other figures that I had shared with you. Um, Educational attainment, this was really positive. We like to see this. We also like to see there's a lot of emphasis. I'm sitting at Dick Anderson's office here in Billings, but there's a huge emphasis on the trades, and we really need folks to work in those industries because not only are there businesses to take over, generational businesses, but construction is one of our fastest growing industries in the state. Okay, and then this tells us where are people going to work every morning? What is driving the economic development and vitality of a community? And then also what we look at is what community employment areas and clusters are contracting and what do we need to watch for? This is what you hear when, if you've lived in your community for 50 years, you go, we were this. We were at one time an oil town. Are we still? And kind of answering those questions. This can kind of exemplify that for you. And then we'll go down. So I said earlier, their emphasis is on tech employment. I will just briefly talk about what tech would look like to Montana right now. And I think the big topic right now is two words, data center. And there are communities who are either very hungry and want this type of investment or communities with questions and need more information about that. But the overall theme that we're seeing is that what data centers need is a lot of land and a lot of space. And from a workforce perspective, it's not a huge employer, but the jobs wages are very high. So you may get 60 really high paying jobs versus an investment that may come that's 200 or 300 jobs. What Corey is really trying to emphasize is how do we meet the moment in all the investment that's coming to tech, and also the fact that eventually people are figuring out that Montana has land, and how do we get a piece of that? So here you can see the real GDP per capita and how that is growing or contracting. It also tracks entrepreneurship and your business growth, private investment, which I will talk about in just a second, and then how many folks from your county are applying for business licenses through the state of Montana. How many folks are self-employed? Also a really key metric here that we like to look at. And then you can go on and on. Again, you can see the left side of my screen, how many different tools there are within this report, and this is completely free. So you put in your county, you put in your town, and you'll be able to see a really nice overview of how things are going in your community. One thing I'll point out is remote work is huge, and it's a great way to drive interest and investment in your community where people can kind of now live where they want, and it's not necessarily tied to going into an office. So this is something we watch. You can see here for Treasure, the 2019 statistic versus post 2024, how many folks are taking advantage of the more flexible work. Infrastructure is always huge. Sometimes infrastructure is the difference between an investment penciling out or not. So we'd want to make sure always keeping a sense of, okay, what land do we have available? Is it tied to the city? Would we need to pull out infrastructure to get an investment there? And I'll talk about some resources to help get that done for you. And then I'm going to just skip down to demographics here. So this shows the population in Treasure County, the median age which I need to move my screen. So the median age in Treasure County is 52. Typical rural community is 42. In the state of Montana, our typical age, median age is about 40. I was just at a economic development report yesterday through the University of Montana, and we are an aging state. So if you see that number is high, that is pretty reflective of what we're seeing statewide. And then per capita income, uh, how that's driving, where the income distribution is going to. Always really interesting to see, okay, this is kind of the capacity of the folks who are living in our community, and let that be a reflection of maybe some of the services that could be offered, small businesses, things like that. Okay, there's a lot here. I find it fascinating. I don't know if some people are already asleep, but we'll continue. Um, and I believe Jennifer is going to share this with you I think she already has. So if you would like to use that tool, also what I find is data can be really important if you're applying for a grant and need to tell the story of your community. It also can be helpful if you are trying to attract a new business. If you're through the chamber or your local economic development organization and someone's looking at a building in your area, you can really share this with them and tell the story about what they could be looking at. Also, if there are any lenders on the call, this is also something that we see local lenders using quite a bit. So before I move on from Corey, any questions? Okay. I'm gonna go to my next. Okay, did I hear that Montana Community Foundation is on the call? Okay. I referenced this report probably multiple times in a month because I'll just check the chat real quick. So I'll answer the Corey questions real quick. So Browning is asking, can you put in a specific community and not only a county? Yes, you can, which is really helpful to draw into your community specifically. So yes, I would recommend that you can do that as well. Okay, now, so Montana Community Foundation, what a great, great partner we have throughout our state. I know a lot of folks on this call are taking advantage of having a community foundation. So much to be proud of in that regard. One thing I really enjoy about the Montana Community Foundation is this Strive for Five initiative. And on here, it basically outlines if 5% of a community's capacity was set into an endowment, what would that mean for that community over the long term? I pull this information quite a bit when I'm talking to stakeholders to try to encourage the philanthropic opportunities that we have within our own state. Because I think if you're on any conversation about trying to improve your community eventually comes down to a money conversation. And how are we going to be able to afford to make this investment? And also, a theme is we go after the same businesses and the same folks over and over again. So, how can we use these tools to see what other opportunities we have? I'm going to look at the chat real quick. Yes. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So, for this, you can pull any, click on your county to get information. For this conversation, I thought we would look at Jefferson County. I think we have a few folks from Jefferson County on the call. So let's start with Jefferson. So the net worth in 2020 is 4 billion. And what really this whole initiative is this is the generational, we need to be eyes wide open about the generational pass down of resources that we're about to experience because see above, we're an older state. So and anyone on this call knows we're a very humble, hardworking state. So there are resources within our own communities and that we need to be aware of when we're thinking about planning endowments for our critical organizations like our hospital foundations, et cetera. So the 10-year transfer for Jefferson County is 595 million. And if just 5% of that, that strive for five, if that was set aside, that would be $30 million. And forever would be 1 million. Does the Community Foundation folks on the call want to add anything before I keep going? Are you good? Okay. And then also something that I've loved to see in recent years is the development of these community foundations and the community support that we've seen for that. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so you can see specific reporting for that foundation, who this foundation is serving, who are the board members driving this investment, and the good work that's happening there. And also, you can download a county report. So when you are in front of different organizations, or you're applying for funding or trying to get initiative up and running, you can use this summary report for your specific county to tell the story of your county, and what are the needs and what are the opportunities here. So really nice layout, sets it all up for you. And this could be an easy printout that you share with folks as they're doing estate planning. One thing I'll share is 70% of Montanans don't have a will. And this is what's on the table. You could really make a difference in not only your own family's life, but the future of your community with planning. And a will is a couple conversations and a small investment. So totally worth it, especially if you're sitting in rooms like this, it means that you care about the future of your community. So really something to consider. And on these reports and on their website, they have information of who to talk to in your specific region. Any questions on these reports? Okay, you can go in and click on your own community, maybe after we have this conversation. The other thing that I'd like to emphasize when I'm pulling all of this together is always consider, I had said that we sometimes go after the same businesses. If you own a business on one of the main corridors, you are getting asked for everything. From a kid who gets to go to San Diego for basketball, and we really want to help them go, all the way to, the cheerleaders and 4-H and all these great organizations. My gosh, we want all of this to really thrive and succeed. Something to consider is there are champions of your community so that for some reason or another do not live there. And they had a great experience in high school, or they were an athletic or academic stud and have records on the walls of the high school, or they were just treated really well. And I can tell you that growing up in rural communities, it's hard to not that community closeness drives you long after you leave. And you want to see those communities succeed. So when you're considering different projects, I make a joke about raffle tickets because I feel like I was always selling a raffle ticket the whole time I lived in Cut Bank. Think about people who don't live in your community and reaching out to them to help drive some of this investment. I have a small story about this. My husband, like I said, grew up in Cut Bank, and Cut Bank was trying to put a book vending machine in one of their elementary schools. And they reached out to Nate, and Nate was so excited and honored that he was asked. And when he saw the picture of the vending machine, he was emotional. That was his elementary school. Those kids get to enjoy that, and he could play a small part in it. So think about those folks who you see, it could be on social media, or that you run into them when you're at a Cat or Grizz game, or your friends' kids. All of these connections that we have 1 degree of separation in our state. And the worst thing that you can be told is no, or not now, which is okay because there could be a good chance that they say yes. And then you've added to your pool of people that you can rely on for resources. And then the other thing that I'd like to emphasize are those companies that do business in your community but are not headquartered or based there. So there's the obvious like Town Pump, Northwestern Energy, those types of folks. But then there's some major investment. I think about the facility that's being built on the High Line. So communities like Havre, Chester, Cutbank, Browning, how can we partner with those companies and say, hey, you're part of our community now. How can you help us? How can we help you so that your employees feel part of the community, et cetera, et cetera? So thinking about those larger companies that we could go to, who do we know there? Who could we introduce ourselves to that they could put some resources in our community as well. Just really encouraging you to think creatively about that because there are opportunities there. Okay, next I want to talk about the Department of Commerce and the state. So previously I was quasi-governmental working in economic development, and what we heard all the time from the Department of Commerce is an emphasis on rural. We want to invest in rural Montana. So what I say to all of you on this call is take advantage of the resources. If they say they want to invest in rural, and a lot of the folks at Commerce right now are, especially the leadership, are from rural communities. We're unique in this state in that we're very much a relationship state. So how can you put your ideas in front of those folks and see what opportunities are there? Because that's who really they're focusing on. They want to see that investment in rural communities. And typically they define rural as, I think I see Miles City on the call, Havre. I think you have those types of communities would be like the top of what they would be looking for in terms of population. And they're putting things out all the time. So I signed up for the Commerce newsletter where they just do a list of all the opportunities, who the contact is, if you'd like to learn more. And sometimes when you're working on a grant, again, I said it at the beginning, but our time and resources are precious, especially in rural. Reach out to them and say, here's what I'm thinking. Does this qualify? I've done that before on a couple of projects, and they're always very helpful. So I'm going to pull up the site and I'm pulling up a grant that just closed. So I don't want anyone's heart to skip a beat of, oh my gosh, I missed this. Maybe some of the folks on this call applied, but this is something I'd really encourage you to watch for the next grant cycle. So this was a building capacity grant that I believe was up to $60,000, and it was to just build the resources that you could provide as a local economic development organization. And the opportunities that you could use the grant for were very, very broad. So tools like this particular grant will probably open next January, I would guess. But there are opportunities like this all the time on the Commerce site. And so I would really encourage you to take a look at this, bookmark this tab on your computer, sign up for the newsletter, and really take advantage of this because sometimes it's 5,000, sometimes it could be 50,000 or 75,000, and man, would that make a difference. So, and the second to last resource that I would share is always be there's key infrastructure in a community that when they are succeeding, the community, it can be a reflection of that. And the obvious ones from my work in economic development is if you have a local economic development organization, really understand what they do and what tools they could provide and what their focuses are and initiatives. All of that information should be public. Given that there's taxpayer dollars involved, their agendas, you can see what they're working on and what their meetings are going to be, where they're meeting, and really plug in, especially if you're a business owner or new to a community, what resources are there for you. And then also another thing I'd emphasize is for the major cities in Montana. So in this case, we're saying Missoula, Kalispell, Helena, Great Falls, Billings, Bozeman. You get the picture there. Their job is to serve sometimes a 9, sometimes a 13 county region, which there is a good chance it includes yours. So in some cases, these EDOs have folks in your community, but in some cases, um, if you live in a rural community, you're used to driving for Costco or a medical appointment or an orthodontist appointment. If you're in this world where you could really benefit from a resource, you have a small business, your spouse has a small business, you are working on a community initiative, I'd sit down with them and let them share with you what opportunities that they have for you. Because I guarantee, just go to the local EDO closest to your community and say, hey, we want to be a really good partner as a community. How can we work together? And I hope that they give you guys a warm welcome and help you guys out. And then last, before we get to questions, is for those who are readers, I just want to share a book that really put some wind in my sails in terms of this work and how important it is. And it's called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. And he came to Missoula, I believe, and was just a speaker in Missoula not too long ago. But this book is The Collapse and Revival of American Community. And Jennifer had said at the top of the call, one of the key initiatives of Reimagining Rural is social capital. And this book is all about how when there were bowling leagues and when the Elks was full, and all of that, that there is just an inherent social capital with your neighbors in your community that then makes that community thrive. And this book spells out exactly how to make that happen in a way that is really inspiring and awesome. So I keep this book at my desk and reference the research in it quite often. And so I would encourage you to go to your local bookstore or wherever you get your books to get a copy of that book. Okay, those are the resources I have for you. Jennifer has shared those with your communities. I do have a couple minutes for questions, and I can just take a look real quick at the chat if I can find it. Let's see. Am I still sharing my screen? Is there a way to stop that? Okay, let's see. Still?
Actually, so I mean, yeah, I think you're still sharing your screen. I don't see any questions on here yet. So
Okay.
if you do have a question for Ashley, we have about 7 minutes. So if you, I can see that some communities are having conversations as Ashley's talking. That's cool. If you have a question, you can throw it into the chat box. Maybe folks will give
Ashley,
us
we had a question on that first resource. Where does that data come from that goes into all those figures?
Okay, so good question. So it shows the sources. Usually a good data source will show you where they're getting their data from. And typically this is from available federal and state data, which the state has a whole data and analytics department that this research draws from. And that information is updated quarterly.
And if you have time, how do we split it out by communities?
So you'd want to compare it to a specific community, is that what you're saying? Okay, so if you
Yes.
look at the Corey resource, when you go onto the economic development tool, you can put in your community first, and then it asks you where you want to compare to. In my case, I did rural counties, but you could compare to a specific county or community yourself, and then it'll show you the whole narrative of the state of Montana as well.
It's pretty easy to use.
It is.
Yeah, it is pretty intuitive. Any other questions for Ashley? If anybody has questions, you can throw them in the chat or you can unmute and as we're just kind of sitting waiting, I do have a question. So in the Corey data that you provided, and
Mm-hmm.
it's talking about tech, do you see, I mean, I guess I'm making this assumption, but so tell me if I'm wrong. Tech is growing in Montana.
Yes.
Very much so. Okay, so how do you envision like being able to use this kind of a data point? Because I'm gonna maybe throw all this stuff together here in some kind of a soup type question.
Yeah.
So okay, so if we look at this data point or the Corey data set and we say tech is growing, and then we throw that into the conversation, into the mix of the conversation with the transfer of wealth. So we know that that there's a huge transfer of wealth happening in our rural communities. We know that 70% of the people out there don't have a will. We know tech is growing. So there is a shift in land ownership happening in rural areas,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you have a rise in tech and a shift in land ownership, and say you get an out of state owner or somebody who comes in, and people are so used to saying, you know, we don't need, and I am not saying I'm for or against, but we don't need a data center or
Yes.
we don't need a wind farm. We've been
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine up until this point. But the data is probably maybe isn't showing that. It's showing that we are economically we're declining, our people are aging. How do you take that data to start to have a conversation about the realities of what is happening before communities get into crisis mode? That might be a lot to ask, but any
Well, I
thoughts?
think I think that we're seeing this play out in real time, and we're going to see some of the answers to this in the next couple of years. I think this really emphasizes a few things. One, like I said, the data tells us the story of our community in some ways that may be hard for us to swallow. Another piece could be that we are really excited about the investment, and we need to make sure, are we living in reality that we can handle this investment? So that goes both ways. Are we going to put undue burden on our community by getting an investment like this? And are we quite ready for it? I think the other thing that's really important in small towns is a lot of what happens is it's volunteer based, right? So, okay, we need someone to be a mayor. Come on, somebody. We need someone to be our chamber president. Who's out there? These positions are critical right now because really they are the front lines between these companies or commerce bringing investment and the community. And you're seeing this play out where we're seeing very, very busy city council meetings, et cetera, where most of the time it could be just the council members alone. And now there's a lot of engagement. So I would say really understanding your community, what are your strengths and what areas of opportunity do you have? Staying engaged. Again, are your elected officials staying engaged? Does the chamber understand what opportunities may be swirling around those communities so that we can be prepared? And I would just be very curious. I think I always try to approach things from a spirit of curiosity. And with time, you can say, I really just don't think that this is for us. And also, it can be okay to say, you know what, not now. We're not ready for this now. And then try to work with that company and see how that can move. But this is happening in real time, Jennifer.
Yeah, I think for sure it's happening in real time, and it's happening. And I think you're right. Like communities, for whatever, probably multiple reasons, are not tuned in and engaging to the point that they need to be before the situation is at hand. It's kind of like business as usual. We're going through life. We're on, cruise control, not realizing that the next 5, 10, 25 years are going to be very different than what the last 50 were. And how do we prepare ourselves? We cannot continue to try to jam a circle into a square peg, because a lot of the ways that we were doing things they're not going to work anymore. So
I think that's a really good. I had asked earlier that folks really engage with commerce and try to use them as a resource. Maybe a reimagining rural topic could be getting the business attraction team at Commerce to come and talk to you about that. Because for so long, I think communities go, well, they're never going to come here. And now some of those things are the prime opportunities for investment. So maybe getting Commerce to come speak to those specific things. And some communities are working on this in real time.
Yeah. Well, right, for sure, because that is a conversation that communities should be having. Well, if we don't want A,
Mm-hmm.
what do we want? Or
Mm-hmm.
if we don't want A, can we live with C?
Yes, exactly.
And trying to figure out that. Okay, before we have to move on, Browning had a question. This is our first time in Reimagining Rural. How does Reimagining Rural and rural economics align with native regions and support historically underserved minorities? Any thoughts on that? That's a big one.
So I think that's a great question. What I would encourage you to look at is there's a lot of organizations that are focused on rural Native economic development. I actually sat on a panel and 6-month training of lending in Native communities and how do we really provide resources to those communities. So a quick answer would be I would look at Commerce because there are tools that are native community specific, understanding and really responding to those needs. And they have folks on staff who it's their job to put resources in the hands of our native communities and tribes. So I would work with them and see how you can be partners.
Great. Okay, sake of time. This always happens every time we do this. We could go down the rabbit hole with each person and have some really great in-depth conversations. But because of time, and Tara will tell me, get back on time. she's my timer. Anyway, thank you, Ashley, for joining us. We very much appreciate it. Thank you for giving us the resources and sharing those with our communities. As I said, I did provide those to our community coordinators, so you should have those available to you. You might even be able to pull them up when we go into your community conversations. So thank you again for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it. We are going to pivot into the conversation, the community spotlight from Glasgow. I'm not going to share my screen again because I'm just going to tee up the Glasgow folks and we'll go straight from this to them sharing if Cheyenne or Lisa, whoever's going to be ready to do this. But Glasgow, just to give you a little background on Glasgow, up in the northeast corner, they've done some fantastic projects, gotten a lot of stuff done for a rural community. They engage their city council and their city administrator to the next level. It's impressive. So without that, we're going to turn it over to them and hear some success stories from Glasgow.
Hey, thanks, Jennifer. I'm Cheyenne. I'm from the Montana Community Foundation. I'm the local community foundation program officer. And I see some awesome friends from all across the state in the background. Thank you, Ashley, for the great information about MCF. And truly, use our website. We have lots and lots of information. There's tons of grants that might be applicable to you, your community, and your project. And if you live in a community that you don't have a community foundation, let me know. Call me. All my contact information is on the website. So thank you again for having us. And I'm super, super excited. Number one, we get to be in my hometown and I get to be at this table with friends, but also we're going to talk about some things that Glasgow has done really, really well in the last handful of years. So first, we're going to talk about, I have Lisa Koski here. She is the executive director of the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce and has been for many years. But Lisa's going to talk to us about wayfinding. And wayfinding, every time that I've ever been anywhere, people ask about wayfinding. And I think that I'm a little bit biased, but Glasgow's wayfinding truly is second to none. We have incredibly branded wayfinding, super high quality, and it really is beautiful. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about the process? Like, how long has wayfinding gone on in Glasgow?
There was a group of us in our community that came together in 2017. So we've been doing this since 2017. We did a we got a Montana Main Street grant. Montana Main Street's very instrumental in supporting your downtowns, your facades. That word just killed me. And we actually obtained a $15,000 branding essence grant from them. And that kind of started the way. Jennifer was one of the, she was actually on that original, but we started in 2017, and this last year we finally finished basically our wayfinding. So it's taken us almost 10 years. Between grants and community, we have 3 individual groups in the community that have contributed dollars to these wayfinding programs. We have close to $300,000 worth of wayfinding signs within our community. It was no easy task, but the biggest part was we had community engagement. We had many public meetings, and some of the biggest things out of that is, what would you like to see Glasgow be known for? What are we on our signs, and what would come into Glasgow? How do people recognize it's Glasgow? And one of the biggest things, I believe, was our Scotty plaid.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The signs are so distinctive. They're big black signs, white lettering with this beautiful plaid on the bottom. And they're really distinctive.
Yep.
How did you come up with that design?
Lots of community input, lots and lots of community input. But, Glasgow is, we're really school orientated, I believe. And we take a lot of pride in my opinion, Glasgow's Scotty Homecoming is not twofold, does not do any other town in the state justice. And we take pride in our community, our school, and that has the Scotty Terrier. That's our mascot. And then this is the colors, the Scotty plaid. It's bright, it's bold. And I don't think I've ever seen another town do something quite so bright and bold.
Yeah.
But there was probably 8 of us on that first committee, and there's majority of us are still there, aren't we, Greg?
Yeah, still here.
Yeah, Greg.
Senator Greg Hunter in the background waved to everybody, Senator Hunter. So once you had those community meetings, that input, how much did all of this, with the very first round, like how many signs got put up the first time, and about how much did that cost, Lisa?
Well, we went from the branding, and then we had to do the wayfinding. So then we had a document, and that document is probably 50 pages long, our branding. And if anybody wants it, that's on here. In the last 2 weeks, I don't know how many communities I've sent it out to. I don't know if it's wayfinding week or month or what, but I have sent it. I have no problem sending our plan out. It's very detailed, orientated. It has our community questions, our responses from our community questions, everything. But those 2 phases alone was a total of roughly $50,000. So we had $50,000 in just the branding and the planning of the signs. And part of the planning of the signs was instrumental on where we wanted all the signs located.
Oh yeah, there's a picture in the chat. Everybody,
look at one of our signs.
Picture of our signs. Thank you. So Lisa, when you're ready to go, you got the signs. How do you go about deciding where they're going to go?
The architecture group, we went with CT&A out of Great Falls, and they were really instrumental on going through each location with us, what we felt. They said it's always best to come work inside out. So we started with some key features inside our community, like our Valley Event Center. It's right on Highway 2. It's a huge visitor place for hockey and other sporting events. The schools was another one, and it's off the beaten path, but we have kiosks. We have 8 kiosks throughout our community right now, with another kiosk going up in less than a month to finish out the last kiosk, and it's down at our brand new community swimming pool. And those signs alone were almost $20,000 each of those, I want to say. Sure. Very expensive. They're 2-sided. They have our city maps and then local points of interest on all of them. So they're very detail oriented, but you can actually pull up to any of them, get out and look at them. So, and we wanted the visibility. We have a beautiful one that's lighted down at the corner of the Busted Knuckle headed out towards on Highway 24. They're just all over.
Yeah.
But they were very expensive. And we did, with the program, we had to send out RFPs to all the people, because anything over a certain dollar amount with the state most, like I said, the majority of our funding was written through grants, through the Montana Main Street program, and then the Department of Commerce. And we partnered with the city. Our city of Glasgow actually owns the signs, but between our three organizations, the Glasgow Tourism Business Improvement District, Two Rivers Economic Growth, and the Chamber, we've put in all the matching funds to it. And those matching funds, we've put in about $65,000 between three organizations over the last 10 years. You can't do it all at once. You have to do it in phases unless your town has somebody very charitable that wants to just give you a whole bunch of money. Because I know the signs since we started have gone up a lot.
Certainly.
So in the planning, it's an expensive endeavor. And if you have a good core group of people that keep plugging away at it, I mean, we've met nights, weekends, meetings. It's the amount of hours that you have into this it does not go. It's time consuming. It really is.
So in the chat, everybody, Jennifer just put up the last picture that she just put up is actually not part of our wayfinding signage. However, there was an idea. There's an ugly electrical box downtown. There's a few of them in town. And so our Glasgow TBID had decided that we needed to do something. So some kind of vinyl wraps on there. And then one of our committee members had said, what if it matches the wayfinding signs? And they're just beautiful and they're so sharp. And that was relatively inexpensive.
We have three of those in our community, 2 on Highway 2 and 1 downtown. And I think those signs roughly cost us about $6,000 in total.
6,000.
So not bad. We used 2 local photographers, their work to showcase their work. One is, a lot of people know him, Sean Hebe, and then Carlos Valli, I believe is how you say his last name. And we paid them to get their photos, and then they're up, and we have 2 on, like I said, 1 at the intersection going underneath the underpass, 1 coming up from the railroad tracks, those both on Highway 2, and then the 1 down that you see here at Valley Drug or Western Drug. The one thing I did not know is those are MDT boxes, and you have to get an MDT permit to put stuff on those. It's one thing I learned along the way that I did not know. So if you're going to wrap something that you don't own, you can't just do that. You have to get approval. It was a little small slap on the finger, but they were okay. They gave me the permit and we moved forward. So, but that was a very rather inexpensive part of the whole wayfinding plan. And it really changed the appeal of that ugly gray silver metal box.
So we'll make sure to, I'll make sure that Lisa's email address gets put into the chat. Truly, the offer to all the communities of, please share your wayfinding information. It really is an honest offer. Lisa's very, very happy to share that.
I'll even share the grants that I've saved for all the grants that we actually wrote for the wayfinding project, because in the chamber world, we call it rip off and repeat. Our manpower is so small, but if we spend all the time doing it constantly, you're never going to get anything done. So a lot of people we share grants like crazy. So if you want a copy of our grant, I'm willing to share all that too.
So the other program that I want to talk about just very, very briefly is we're going to visit with Jennifer Robley. She is the president of Two Rivers Economic Growth. And one of my favorite projects is the Valley County Storefront Beautification Grants. So Jennifer, do you want to talk a little bit about, I also want to make sure that the camera moves to Jennifer, so we may have to shuffle a little bit. But do you want to talk a little bit about just kind of the history of that program?
Yeah, so.
Is it going to? Here, switch me spots. They don't need to keep doing it. There you go.
So the Storefront Beautification Grant started 9 years ago. Betty Stone suggested taking money out of our savings account and reinvesting that in the community in the form of storefront grants in the amount of $1,000 each to be used for facade improvements, signage, lighting. And so every year we've continued that on, and in the last few years we actually made some changes to the grant We increased it from $1,000 each to $2,000 each, and we've opened it up from just our members being able to apply for it to anybody in Valley County. If you're not a member, there's a 50-50 match. But that has, we had a lot of feedback that private businesses, they don't qualify for grants like this. And in a rural community, when you're trying to keep costs down and pay your employees and retain your employees, it's hard to take a big expense out to make a improvement on your storefront.
Sure.
And so it's kind of created a ripple effect. We're investing in our community. These business owners are investing in the community. You see your neighbors doing it, and it just spreads. And we have awarded over $32,000 in grants to over 20 businesses in Glasgow and Valley County.
That's huge.
It's huge. And it's ranged from new signs, restoring old signs, awnings, painting, brick restoration, roofing. Gosh, Hinsdale did new trash cans.
Sure. So, oh gosh, will you check the microphone over there?
For some reason, it keeps getting unplugged over there.
Can you guys still hear us? Jennifer, can you hear us still? Okay, good. Okay, super. So Jennifer, how often do you offer these grants?
It's once a year. The grant opens up in May.
Okay.
Yep. And it's open for about a month. Sure. And then our committee meets and awards those. Last year we had 14 applicants, and unfortunately our budget just doesn't reach that far. Sure. So we have to make some tough choices. But yeah, it's a fantastic program. Sure.
So if you were to give some of our friends on the call advice of like, okay, wow, that sounds so great, I want to start that, what would be like maybe some key things that you've learned along the way?
It takes volunteers showing up for your community, doing the things, in the evening, in the lunch hours, and committing to creating opportunities that didn't exist before. Sure. Cheyenne was our executive director for
full transparency. I used to work there.
The amount of nothing into something that you did, just creating opportunities and saying yes to anything that comes along that's how we got here, and a lot of cooperation between different groups, different committees, different nonprofits. It's all about relationships and working together.
Our community works very well together. That's a huge benefit.
Yeah, it sure is.
Between the county, the city, the schools, the chamber, Two Rivers, the hospital. We play really well together.
Yeah. So I know that was a lot of information in 18 minutes, but if anybody has questions, we do have 2 minutes. I'm watching the time too, Jennifer. But yes, I'm going to pop Lisa's email into the chat. I'm also going to pop Jennifer's email into the chat. If you have this dream to start some sort of storefront grant or just creating those opportunities, like she said, my email got thrown in the chat earlier. So thank you for having us. This was so great. Can you speak about the legal side of a facade improvement program?
Ooh. The only thing, whatever you're applying for in our application, it does have a statement that you have to meet any building permit requirements ahead of time. Any zoning, anything that you need to take care of.
Yes.
That's something to think about if you're in a right of way easement.
Yeah. Absolutely.
A lot of our stuff.
And truly a lot of those facade improvements, we're
just very cosmetic for the most part. You know, it was somebody putting some paint up. But yeah, certainly there was a disclosure of, have you received the permits? I don't know that has there ever been one on like a building that's on the historic registry?
The only one I can think of is Mary's Mercantile, but she might have gone out of her way to
Sure.
restore the brick to the original thing. She got those corbels.
Yeah, but
but
not really. That hasn't been the norm.
not working with
So.
the Historical Society or anything.
Yeah.
Question, ladies. So we need to we need to pivot, but very quickly. TBID. So describe very, very quickly TBID, because I am sure there's a lot of folks who don't know what that is. And how did you, so again, real quick, how did you, Two Rivers Economic Growth is your economic development organization for just Valley County, right?
Yes.
And are you still part of a larger regional economic
We are.
development
We're
group?
still
Okay.
served by Great Northern Development. And so I actually have two folks from Great Northern Development here tonight. And so they're the regional EDO, and then Two Rivers just serves Valley County.
So I know we're going to run out of time tonight, but okay, so tell TBID really quickly. What is TBID?
TBID stands for the Glasgow Tourism Business Improvement District. And what it is the city created an ordinance that all hotel rooms in Glasgow, each hotelier has to contribute $2 per overnight stay. So say the Cottonwood in October has 500 rooms sold. So for the month of October, they remit $1,000 to the city of Glasgow, and then the chambers and /TBID administers those funds, and we turn that back into investing in our community with sports grants, event grants, signage, lighting, just about everything. But if you go onto our chamber webpage, there's a direct link to the TBID webpage. It explains in detail what TBID is, all of our grant requirements. And it's a local group though. So we accumulated, our budget this year was close to $85,000 off of, and it's not off locals in the community, it's off people coming to our community, staying in our hotels, and then that return comes back to us to invest in our community, to keep it going.
And also on the TBID website is all of the grant information. So feel free. We built ours off of Billings.
Yeah. Glasgow was actually second in the state of Montana, right behind Billings, to form a TBID. So we've been doing it a long time. We started ours in 2010, and we're on our second. Each year you have a renewal period, and you have to have 75% of the hotels in your city, your district, to say yes to it. We only have 5 there in our district, so all we had to do basically was have one say no, but we still could form the district. So and once that happens, every 10 years is a renewal period. That's where you can say, like the big 7 communities right now, they offer, some of them are at $4 a night, some are at $3. There was talk they were going to go up a little higher, but with the attack on bed, because it's bed tax, it's kind of formed off of the state's bed tax dollars also. Legislators been trying to cut property taxes, and that's a mechanism to take bed tax dollars to shift it. And so the TBIDs and the bed tax, all that's under scrutiny right now. So, or it comes up every year, legislative session, they want our money. So, but like I said, it's a city tax, and it stays in your community to promote events, infrastructure, you name it, tournaments. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Lisa. If you guys, we're gonna pivot to our community conversation so that you guys have some adequate time to talk and maybe look over some of the resources that Ashley shared tonight. If you are interested in learning more about TBIDs, because I know this has kind of been a hot topic in the past, please let us know. We can work on setting up what's called an inspiration hour or another time where we don't take attendance and we don't, you just get on from your bedroom if you wanted to. And we'll talk about T-bids. So let us know if that is something of an interest to you, your communities. So in the meantime, we're moving on to our local conversations. So your community coordinator has discussion questions. So please use these questions as a guide to kickstart your local conversations about your town. You certainly don't have to go through all of those questions. You can pick and choose. I know Miles City, they revamped it. That is totally cool too. The purpose of this time is for y'all to connect eyeball to eyeball, talk about what matters in your community, what you heard tonight, how you might be able to implement something like that. There's no bad conversations. Now, I also want to put this up here too. Hopefully your coordinators, they might have shared this with you as well. So we do have some group ground rules. So Reimagining Rural tries to create a space for our communities to come together to listen, learn, and connect and build our local capacity. It's done best when all stakeholders, that is everybody, is invited to participate and take ownership of creating some positive change. So therefore, during your conversations, we strive to be engaged. That means turn off your phones and tune into the conversation. Be open to some new ideas. We have all probably heard and said, we tried that and it didn't work, or that'll never work here. So responses like this are just not helpful anymore. So if you hear that coming, going to come out of your mouth, stop. Be inquisitive. If another participant's statement differs from your perspective, lean in and ask questions. Debate ideas, not necessarily people. Listen and learn. Listen to be for understanding. Be a gracious neighbor. That's really simple. Only one person talks, share, or shares at a time. If you are an oversharer, try to be silent. If you typically don't share, please try to find the courage to speak up. Practice Elmo. Enough. Let's move on. So you can talk an item to death. It's easy to get stuck on something. So signal when it's Elmo. Use I statements. Take ownership of your actions, your ideas, and your input. Be very careful about hearsay. And lastly, use a parking lot. So if a question comes up and y'all don't know the answer to it, or you want to talk about it later on, put it in the parking lot. You can't tackle it tonight, but we need to circle back to it. It's great to have a parking lot. You can also add additional items to your ground rules. Just be kind and be inquisitive and innovative. So this time is for you. We're going to pause everything here and we will come back live at 7:50 and do a little debrief. So have at it.
their posters to the wall, because there was no insulation, it's just bare walls. Well, when we peel those plaster off, there's still, we saved a couple of people up there that we tried to date and just crumbled. So there
Hey folks, I'm chiming in here in a minute. Not sure if you guys can hear me, but we have about 10 minutes left. 10 minutes of discussion time left. Okay, we have about 5 minutes, folks. 5 minutes till we bring everybody back together to debrief. If your community is ready, I see some are still talking. That's great. If your community is ready, we have some wrap-up questions, which I will put on the screen here in a second. Please share in the chat the answer, your responses. Thanks. Okay, folks, it's about 10 to 8, 7:50. So it's getting very close to the time for us to just do a very quick debrief run through. We questions that we just have is what's the most important topic that came up during your local conversation. So if you have a moment and you can share, please put in the chat box. Highlights of your local conversation. For one, If you want to know more from Glasgow on their TBID or their local economic development organization, because I'm pretty sure that most of you are within, as Ashley said, you're probably covered in a regional economic development organization, but may not have a local one. So if you want to learn more about that too, that would be great. We can try to make that happen. If you've got questions about the grants, we can give you as much support as possible, but from this week to next week's session. So if you've got a few minutes, have someone from your group, please put in the chat box, most important topic of your local conversation. I see Glasgow's talking about broadband. Our big Hardin is saying our big dream board has the most ideas on it. Beautification on Highway 2 and wayfinding, Chester. Yeah, every town wants to do wayfinding after you talk to, and by the way, there are a couple other examples of communities. Roundup has also done a phenomenal job at wayfinding. Identifying our community/county assets and thoughts on wayfinding opportunities across the county. That's coming from Mineral County. Great. There might be some other ones over in your area that did wayfinding. I'll look and see if I can find them. Wayfinding in Baker. Wayfinding, local mentorship. I lost one of my comments. Browning, beautification to improve lifestyles of the community members and draw tourism numbers. Very good. So as we're kind of waiting to see if anybody else, more messages. Here we go. Havre has pilot community tourism grant program. So do some of our other communities as well. I think, don't get me wrong, Hardin also, did Glendive get one too? Yeah, it's Hardin, I got the thumbs up. I think Glendive does as well. So we have Glasgow, did you guys? I don't remember. Yes, Cheyenne is nodding her head. So we have numerous communities on tonight that received the pilot tourism grant. That is also something we could talk about at some point.
Experience on what the good and the bad and the ugly.
The good, the bad, and the ugly from the pilot tourism grant.
Yep.
For sure. Okay. Glendive. Oops, I apparently cannot run the chat very well. Glendive discussed the strengths of the community and the amount of positive people. Very good. In Hayes, we discussed how we can increase community buy-in to ensure long-term sustainability for their community garden. Lincoln, wayfinding, branding, kiosks, capturing tourists. Well, I think you're in the right spot, Lincoln, because you've got some great examples that are in the room. Forsyth, Glasgow, Cut Bank, they all have went before you on those same things. Housing opportunities, yes, that's a big one. Walking paths, beautification, sidewalks, lighting. Branding in Fromberg. Woohoo! Yes, can Glasgow share their information via Google Drive? Yeah, we'll figure that out to be able to get you. I'm okay. So who asked that question? Lincoln. Okay, so we can try to put together more. If it's wayfinding you're after, we can try to talk to some of the other communities that have also done wayfinding and the branding. Fromberg, we got a lot of public input. You're excited. Yay. Well, we're excited for you guys. Yep, they can share. We would like that information here too, specifically about the TBID, how you got the TBID going. I know that's a hard conversation, a hard sell sometimes in our communities is how to start a TBID in our small towns. Okay, well, if anybody else has comments, we'll stay on. You can share those, or if you have questions specifically for us, please put those in the chat, or want additional information, let us know. You can always email me. Your community coordinators have my contact information, and we will work hard to get you the information that you would like. that's the big thing about getting all these communities together. I think Tara did the counting, and we have like 238 people across the state on here tonight participating, which is awesome. So that's in our, not actually 21 communities, because I think we had all communities show up and participate tonight. So one of the biggest things about reimagining the rural is you all learning from each other and sharing resources with each other. So next week, here's the deal. So we will be here, same time, same place on the 11th. And our rural expert is going to be the Department of Public Transformation. This is not a government entity. This is a nonprofit organization that's coming to us from Minnesota. And they really focus on creative rural engagement. So this is a hot topic for all of us. It's like, how do we get people to participate? So that they're going to be sharing with us about that. And important to note, they are located in Minnesota, but they do serve Montana. So they do have some programs and funding and things available. So tune in to learn more about the Department of Public Transformation. Our community spotlight is going to be White Sulphur Springs. They're a past Reimagining Rural town, and they're doing fantastic stuff. So we're going to hear from them. Then we're going to have more time for community conversations and closing comments. So with that, we are out. We'll keep we got 3 minutes left. So we'll keep the Zoom up if you have additional questions or comments you want to throw in. And if y'all want to continue on your conversations, that's up to you. But 8 p.m. we'll shut everything down. So thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Shoot, I also forgot to tell you guys as a reminder, do your time cards, do your sign-in sheets and send them to me. You can either take a picture of it, send it via text message, scan it, whatever, but send me a copy of your sign-in sheets, please.